In this third episode of 365 Brothers, you're going to hear through one man's stories the variety of experiences that African American men have had with law enforcement over time. Get comfortable. Welcome to 365 Brothers.
Today, we have the privilege of hearing from a lifelong educator who is also a world traveler. He has participated in both Teacher Corps and Peace Corps, met his wife while participating in the Teach Corps in Ghana. And this amazing gentleman is about to share his life experience and his wisdom with us. I'd like to welcome Shedrick Sanders. Thank you, Shedrick, for being here.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Shedrick, is there anything you want to share about yourself, your family, or your life experience before we run into the questions?
Well, I just like to tell people I was born in an African village on the south side of Chicago, where all the people were immigrants from Mississippi, and they acted as if they were from West Africa. They treated all children as if they were their own. So I had a lot of parents, a lot of people looking after me, and just had a safe atmosphere growing up because people were looking out for me all the time. I'm a grandfather. I'm proud of that. I got 2 wonderful daughters and 3 fantastic grandchildren. And I'm just happy with that.
That's great. That's great. Our audience can't see this. I do our interviews over Zoom, and you literally beam when you talk about your grandchildren, literally beam. So I guess I'm not supposed to say literally with beaming, but that's what it seems like. Before we get into the questions, can you talk a little bit about your world travels, like some of the places you've gone that really stood out?
Well, after we came back from the Peace Corps, I recruited for Peace Corps for 3 years. And I kept seeing these signs about teaching overseas, getting the contract to teach overseas. So I went over to the University of Northern Iowa, my wife and I, and we interviewed for several places. So they hired us to go to Lahore, Pakistan. Taught 3 years of mathematics and physics, and I coached basketball, and I coached flag football.
And who were the students that you were generally teaching? Were these Pakistani children, American children? Who were they?
It was a mixture, but mostly Pakistani children. It was an American school, and these kids were prepared to go to United States universities. So the curriculum was a standard high school, a private high school education that you'd have in the States. And so it was a small school, a lot of really enthusiastic students. But I'd say maybe about 75% were Pakistani students.
That's fantastic.
We had students from all over the world. We had students from Sweden, we had students from Latin America, all over the world, but mostly Pakistani students.
What are some of the travels that some of the places you've been that really stand out? Because you've gone to over 30 countries. What can you share with our listeners? Some of our listeners may not have left the United States at all. And so your experiences are amazing. I don't even know if I can count 10. Well, yeah, I've probably gone to 10 countries, but nowhere near 30. So can you share a little bit?
Well, what happened when I was 13 years old, I saw this movie, Black Orpheus. It was carnival set. It was a story set in Brazil during carnival time. And I saw this and I said, I want to go there. Because in those days, you didn't see too many Black people on television, not to this extent. So I said, I got to go there. And my boss on my paper out told me, yes, you do have to go there. So when I got to college, I started thinking, I have to start making some little trips to prepare myself for this. So I went to Mexico maybe 3 times, visited a friend who was in Mexico. Then I went to Europe, took a tour of Europe. Then I went to Haiti. And that was probably one of the most different places that I've been. Open sewage and roads that weren't paved necessarily, and people begging and things like that.
What year was that?
That was back in 1969. And that was a trip to prepare me. But one of the things I found out was no matter what the conditions were, the people were so nice. They were friendly. And the old man told me, he said, look, don't worry about these beggars and stuff. They're just doing that for sport. It's easy to find shelter from the sun. And if you're industrious, you wait for the food to fall off the tree and eat it. or you can climb it and get it. And in those days, it was pretty good at that time. They had forests. They were doing a lot of wood carving. A lot of students spoke English, and they were, preparing to be doctors and stuff. So it was really, really nice, and the people were really friendly. My friend and I said, "Okay, it's time. I'm ready to go to Brazil." And so we got a van, bought a van, and this friend and I, friend from high school, his name is Leonard, we going to drive to Brazil. So we thought.
Okay, because I got to tell you right here, I'm like, you drove that? Okay, so go on, please continue.
Well, the truck broke down in St. Louis. So we didn't get too far from Chicago to St. Louis. But we just packed the stuff, shipped it back, got on a bus, went to Mexico City, stayed in Mexico City for a couple of days, then went to Veracruz, went to Acapulco, then we stayed in Mexico for about 2 months. Then we went down through Guatemala, got all kinds of visas and stuff, went to Honduras, San Salvador, and Nicaragua. We got stuck at the Honduras-Nicaragua border for about 2 days, 3 days. Wow. And then got a hitchhike in a Winnebago that took us all the way to Costa Rica. So got to San Jose, Costa Rica, met up with some Americans in McDonald's. I had no money. They lent me $10 to go make a phone call so I could phone home and have some money sent. And Costa Rica had fantastic communications in those days. So I was able to get the money in one day. So the next day, I saw these same guys at McDonald's, paid them back their money. Well, it turns out these guys were drug dealers.
Uh-oh.
And 2 Black Americans meet up with these guys who were drug dealers. They assumed that we were drug dealers too, but they weren't sure, so they arrested us, put both of us in jail, let me out, and kept my friend. And they followed me for 30 days while I tried to get my friend out. And then they realized that we weren't drug dealers. They captured the guys, and the guys told them that we weren't drug dealers. Finally, to get my friend out, we went to Panama, thought about, do we really want to keep going? We said, yeah, we're going. So we left Panama, got to Colombia, hitchhiked from Colombia to Santa Cruz, Bolivia. And that's some of the best hitchhiking in the world. Met some of the most fascinating people. People would take us home, feed us, help us get another ride, give us money. And we asked them, why do you treat us so nice like this, You say, where you from? We say, Chicago. And you go, Al Capone. And then you say, come on home with us. Say, oh, you gonna take us home? Yeah. And they take us home. When I asked them, they said, well, 3 things. 1, you give us information about the rest of the world. 2, you're entertaining. Listen to you try to speak Spanish is the funniest thing in the world. And 3, it gives us status in the community. People say, those Black Americans stayed at our house on such and such a time, and gives them status in the community. And they were really hungry for knowledge. They really wanted to know about Malcolm X. They wanted to know about Martin Luther King. They wanted to know about the whole racial situation in the United States. And I was wondering, why these white folks can't get along with people? What's wrong with them?
And this is still in the late 60s, yes?
This was 1970, yeah.
Okay, so we're now in 1970. How many months were you guys on the road from Chicago to finally get to Brazil?
It took us 7 months to get to Brazil. We stayed there for 4 months. It was fantastic.
Yeah, that is a rich experience you had. And then from Brazil, how long between Brazil and getting to Ghana?
Well, I got back from Brazil. I actually flew back from Brazil. And I went to my music teacher because I had a recorder, which is a little instrument, a little flute, that I took with me to Brazil. And people just loved it. I met all kinds of people by playing music. And I went to tell my music teacher about it. And she had me speak to the class. And then she said, you should join Teacher Corps. And it was an office right down the hall. I went down there, knocked on the door. The office was closed, but I knocked on the door. Somebody was in there. They came and let me in. I asked about the program. They said the program was closed. I said, Dad. I said, do you have any applications anyway? He found me an application. I filled it out, sent it in. 2 weeks later, they told me they wanted me to come to Tampa, Florida, to be for a Teacher Corps Peace Corps program. They were working to get more minorities into the Peace Corps because Kwame Nkrumah had said, "You keep sending us all these white Peace Corps volunteers. I know you got black people over there that's qualified. Send us some black volunteers." So they started some programs at some historical black colleges, and they also started Tampa, Florida, to try to get more Hispanics. And so I came in with me and Herman, we came in with a lot of the Hispanic groups. So we had a ball. That's why I met Herman.
Shedrick is best friends with my uncle Herman. Herman is my uncle. He was an educator here in Long Beach, and he now lives in Ghana with his wife, whom he met while he was in the Peace Corps in Ghana. So Shedrick is an old family friend.
In fact, I was the best man at his wedding, and he was the best man at my wedding.
So is there anything else you want to say before we go into the question?
That's about it.
Okay, great. What is your favorite song, either all time or right now?
All time, it's a song by Grady Tate. It's written by somebody else, but it's called Sack Full of Dreams. Donald Hathaway also sings it. Both of them sing it very well. And it's a song that I like to have in my head when I'm just walking. So,
what is it about the song that you love?
Oh, it says, "I got a dream for the world, peace in the rivers and everywhere, bridges of love and steel, and people that care." So I just like to have that going in my head. I love that song.
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't know that I've heard it before. I may have and don't recognize it, but I'm going to go listen to it. What's a favorite childhood memory?
Actually, it's one of them is getting robbed on my paper route.
You got to tell us about this.
I was delivering newspapers on 53rd and Prairie in Chicago. It was a third floor apartment in a 6-flat building. And there's a very old customer. She was really an old lady. And she paid me the money, and then she closed the door. And when I went to go downstairs, I noticed some movement downstairs. I looked down, and I could actually see the reflection off the night. And I said, "Oh, man, this is trouble." And I thought I could run back upstairs and knock on the door. But I said, "That lady, she's not going to open the door fast enough. That man, he'd come up here and cut me up." And I remember what my boss told me, my mentor, he says, "Don't fight over the money. Give it to him. Hand it over." So I took the money out of my pocket and put it in my hands and walked down the stairs with the money held out in my hand. And the guy saw me come down the stairs. He says, "Oh, you ain't no fool. You ain't going down with no money." I said, "Oh, no. I'll be back tomorrow. I want to work tomorrow." So he looked at me, he says, "Sit down." And he put the knife in his back pocket, and he rolled up his sleeves and showed me the tracks in his arms. And he said, "Didn't no strangers put these needles in my arm. It was my friends." He said, "When you learn to say no to your friends, then you will be free." And it's like, oh. And I thought about that. And he left. He said, "I'm going to leave, and you better not stick your head out the door. I might cut your head off." And I sat there for a good 10 minutes just thinking about what he told me. And I said, he didn't have to tell me that. I hope they don't catch him, because I don't want to have to identify him and send him to jail, because he was nice enough to at least give me some advice. Less than a week, I was in the backyard with my friends, and they had some white port and Kool-Aid, drinking. Mixed the white port and the Kool-Aid, drink it, and pass it around. And when it got to me, I thought about what he said. So you learn to say no to your friends, then you'll be free. And I looked at him, I didn't want to drink it. And I said, "No, I don't want it." And I passed it on. They said, "What, you think you're better than we are?" "Yeah, I do." And they laughed, and they got drunk. And we all went home. I went home. But I didn't start drinking until much later in my life. And it wasn't because of peer pressure. And peer pressure didn't affect me as much because of what this man told me. And so, and it was interesting. 4 years later, when I graduated from high school, these guys came to my graduation and gave me a bottle of wine with a wink, said, "That night, we knew you was going to make it. That you was making it out the neighborhood."
Wow. That is profound. I don't actually believe in coincidence. I think that the universe is conspiring for our success. And I love hearing that when you first said that you were going to share that your favorite childhood memory was when you got robbed. I was intrigued, but I understand that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked already about your being a globe-trotting educator, but I want to ask you about your accomplishments. And I asked this question in two parts. Which accomplishment is the one that is most meaningful for you? And then secondly, which accomplishment is the one that impresses the world, at least from what the feedback you've received?
But both of them is the same. That trip to Brazil, that really encouraged me to be able to do more things. Here I was 13 years old. I would look at a globe and it looked immense to me, huge. I would never get here. It was so far away. And then to go to Brazil and to go through all the things I had to go through. I mean, going with no money, being told before I left that people aren't going to treat you that well. They're going to, be hostile to you and things like this. And then challenging that and going and finding out for myself and realize that human nature is not what they tell me human nature is. I found that people were basically nice, extremely good to strangers, whereas in the United States, people tend to be more afraid of strangers. These people welcome strangers. They may not have a lot of money. They had a lot of spirit, kindness, and very generous with what they had. People would come invite us to their house, clean up everything. I mean, they clean up the room, spare room they had, clean it up, fix it up, and then let us stay there, fix us breakfast, some fantastic coffee and bread and butter and stuff like this, and just treat us so good. So when I left there, it was like, I could do anything behind this. I was up in the mountains and stuff and got sunburn on my nose and almost got frostbite on my ears at the same time. I had people on the street at times, and sometimes I step in what they call them, homeless shelters. And I'd never even seen a homeless shelter in the United States at that time. But in Brazil, I had to sleep at a homeless shelter, things like that. But the people were just so friendly. And I went through kind of a prophetic kind of a thing too, because I was fasting and stuff in those days. And I had fasted before the trip to Brazil. And I had all kind of prophetic dreams and things. And I would say things and they would happen. And my friend who was traveling with me would say, what's gonna happen next? Tell me what's gonna happen next. First of all, we were in at the Honduras-Nicaragua border. They wouldn't let us in. And I said, Dag, Leonard, a white Winnebago's gonna come and pick us up and take us to Costa Rica. I dreamed about it. So Leonard said, okay. So a Volkswagen came with a couple from Chicago in it. So we thought, this is good. And they said, no, we on our honeymoon. We're not going to give you no ride. And so we sat down, kind of dejected. And then they said, but that wasn't a white Winnebago, because here's a white Winnebago coming over the hill right now. I said, don't play, Leonard. And look, a white Winnebago came. They picked us up and took us to Costa Rica.
Really?
Uh-huh. And then I had a dream about a man in Sao Paulo. I said, Leonard, by the time we get past the Bank of America, a tall black man's gonna come and take us home. We was walking and we slowed down. We got to the Bank of America and this black man came out and says, hey, he didn't take us home. He gave us a card with his address on it and told us to go to his house. And he kept us there for 2 weeks. Huh. And that's the story that impacted me the most. And that's the story a lot of people tend to like to hear about the most.
That's so amazing. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, did you have any prophetic visions or dreams about just before you met your wife?
No, but it was interesting how that happened, though. It was strange.
Talk to me.
Because, my group came in from Tampa, Florida to Philadelphia. Her group came in from someplace else to Philadelphia. And I was standing with my group, and we was watching their group as they got off the plane. And I said, ooh-wee. I said, Ghanaian women are beautiful. There's some beautiful Ghanaian women. And Sly, who's what our housemate says, oh man, they're not Ghanaian. They're American. They're Peace Corps volunteers too. I said, what, Darwin there is a Peace Corps volunteer? Oh, I gotta meet her. So I met my wife at the airport in Philadelphia. Got on the plane and said, okay, I gotta talk to this young lady here, and got to talking to her and stuff. And I don't think she was very impressed with me initially, but I think I grew on her. Plus, I had this book called a massage book, and I was practicing massage. And I asked her, I said, if I could find some olive oil, would you let me practice massage on you? She said, yeah. The first store we went into was full of olive oil. Whole shit full of olive oil.
Wow.
So I gave her a nice massage, and I think that's what got her. That nice massage.
Yeah, that would. And how long have you guys been together now?
Oh, we've been married for 45 years.
That's amazing. Do you have a favorite quote, metaphor, saying, or book?
Well, The Prophet is one of my favorite books, by Khalil Gibran.
Oh, yes.
I must have read pieces of it 100 times before I actually sat and read it from cover to cover, because it's so quotable on children, on love, on marriage. And I used to go sit on the hill in the springtime at my school at University of Illinois in Chicago. And I'd sit on the hill and I would read that book. And my other favorite book is This Is My Beloved by Walter Benton, which is poetry written in the form of a diary of a man who was in love with this woman that they had separated from. So those two books I would sit and read.
The first book you said was Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. I grew up, my mom had books around, and, not a library, not that, it wasn't that way, but she had a handful of books that were important to her. And I always saw Khalil Gibran's The Prophet. I never read it until I think I was in my 30s, even though I would see that book there. And once I read it, I was just floored by the mood, the heart. It's like he took a heart and squeezed words out of the heart and then put those words on the page. Yeah.
We use on marriage, on love and on marriage, we use in our wedding.
Really? That's beautiful. I hope that some of our listeners will familiarize themselves with that, because that is a really fantastic book. What is, and this may have come up already, and if so, you can tell me, but what's a person, moment, or conversation that stands out as changing the course of your life or had the most significance? And I know you shared about the gentleman who tried to rob you. Is there any other?
Well, my boss, Mr. Langle, he was my boss for 5 years and delivered newspapers. And he noticed that I had a bank book in my pocket one day. And he asked if he could see it. And I showed it to him. And he says, what are you going to do with this money? And I said, well, I'm saving to go to college. He says, oh. He said, does your brother have a bank account too? I said, yeah, he got twice as much as I have. So he says, oh, okay. He said, I want to send somebody to your house to talk to you. I said, oh, okay. So he sent the man to the house, Mr. Coleman, who was a financial planner. And he sat down with me, 13-year-old boy, a 15-year-old boy, my brother, and my mother. And he explained to us how money worked, the rule of 72, the difference between whole life insurance and term insurance. Told my mother, your children don't need to be insured. They're not, nobody's dependent on them. And if something happened to them, heaven forbid, you can still bury them. Nobody's dependent. But if something happens to you or your husband, you need to have adequate insurance to be able to pay for housing and school and all other kind of things. So with term insurance, you can get $1 million worth of insurance cheap. Mm-hmm. Instead of buying insurance for the kids, invest for the kids in mutual funds. So my mother cashed in our whole life insurance policy, got us mutual funds, got more insurance on my dad. And I still have the money from that mutual fund that she started. Just kept building up. I got a loan off of it one time. Made my credit score go way up when I paid it back real quick. So between these two men, Mr. Langham and Mr. Coleman, these two men, they really helped my brother and I understand how money works. They advised us to save $10,000 on our first full-time job. Make that your goal. Don't worry about a car. Don't worry about anything else. And like, I wanted to go away to college. I wanted to go to like Florida A&M or something like that. And he says, son, that's good. Being away in a dorm is fantastic, but you can't afford that. Stay home with your mama, go to a state-supported school, and get that piece of paper. If it takes you 10 years to get that piece of paper, because it opens doors for you. So I stayed home with my mama. At one time I wanted to move. My mother convinced me that wasn't a wise idea, because she could charge me rent, and she did.
I love that. That's funny.
But she said she liked washing clothes. She don't mind washing my clothes and cooking for me. And I was good company. She liked having me around. And she was as happy as she could be. And when I got back from Peace Corps, the money I paid her for rent, she put in a bank account, and I used it on a down payment on the house that I'm living in right now.
That is phenomenal. How fortunate that this boss took that step and made that difference. Going and having this gentleman come talk to you, that has altered the course of your life in such a positive and powerful way. Mm-hmm. That, it's just a nice reminder of how you never know what conversation is going to change someone's life.
And he was a black man who had made $1 million in real estate. And he came back into the black community to help black boys. And he bought the newspaper franchise.
And I'm guessing, was Mr. Coleman, the financial advisor, was he also African-American?
Yes, he was. He wanted to be a stockbroker, but being black at the time, it wasn't possible for him to be a stockbroker. So he went into financial planning. And he's working for an organization called Wardell and Reed. He recruited retired black teachers to work for him. And he set up his business. He helped them get insurance license, securities license, and then flip their annuities into mutual funds instead of annuitizing, and they were able to get bigger returns, and they became really good financial planners for him. And when I first went to his office, I thought Wardell and Reed was a black organization, because there were all these black folks who worked in there. It wasn't until I went to North Carolina I realized, he saw it as a way to help black men, black women get into business on their own and learn about how money really works. But buy term and invest the difference. That was their attitude. And don't annuitize your annuity. Take the lump sum, invest it in a good mutual fund, and let it continue to earn for you. Because if you annuitize it, you no longer control the principal.
Mm-hmm. 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 That's great advice. I mean, I'm just sitting here having conversations with brothers, but I'm telling you, these conversations are dropping knowledge. So that's great. Shedrick, is there a moment that signifies or highlights, either way, the experience of being a black man in America for you?
When Emmett Till was killed, it was 1955, I was 8 years old. We had gone down to Mississippi that year ourselves and had gone through a little training, how to act around those white folks in Mississippi. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Don't look them directly in the eye, stuff like that. So we went down there, and my brother, rebellious as he is, he did something. He didn't say yes, ma'am. He said yeah to somebody, and they made him get out the store. So, and it's kind of like, there before the grace of God go out, because Emmett Till got killed. We came back just before his funeral, saw the funeral. Somebody had made a song called The Ballad of Emmett Till. Al Benson, a DJ in Chicago, black DJ, says, I'm going to play this to death because ain't nobody else going to ever play this no more. And he kept playing it over and over and over again. And I cried and I cried and I cried. And my father said, cry. This is something to cry for. It was interesting. My brother and I went to church after that. And we looked up at the walls and the ceilings and stuff. We saw white Jesus, white angels, And we start thinking, how are we going to ever get into heaven? If Jesus is white, that means his daddy, God, is white. And that means if these white folks don't even want us to go to school with them or drink out of the same fire, how are they going to let us into heaven? So we kind of thought, to hell with this heaven thing, forget about this. But luckily for us, we went to the barber shop the next weekend. The barber was referred to as teacher. That was his nickname, teacher. And he had a picture of a dead tree drawn on his wall with the words, "A race without a knowledge of his past is like a tree without roots, mentally dead." And that's a Marcus Garvey quote. And he had a picture of a black Jesus on his wall. Now this black Jesus has been there all the time. We've been going for years, but it wasn't in our imagination that Jesus would even be black. Luckily again, one of his customers said, "Teacher, why you got that black Jesus on your wall?" We said, "What? That's Jesus?" And this man got in this argument saying that Jesus was white. And teacher said, "Look it, man, if Jesus was to come down today and go to the South, he'd have to get on the back of the bus." And that made me start realizing that I'm being played here. And it got me to a point that I didn't even want to go to a church that even showed the image. Because if it's a white Jesus, to me, that's a white supremacy thesis right there. If it's a black Jesus, it did it because of a black supremacist. So I'd rather not even see Jesus at all. You can tell me about him, I ain't got to see him. That image has been used to dupe both white and black people. Make all of us think that white people are superior. They got a leg up and getting into heaven, things like that.
That's profound.
Mm-hmm.
Have you had any interactions with law enforcement?
Oh, buddy. Yep, a lot. A lot.
Can you tell me a little bit about it?
The first one was when I was real young. Must have been less than 8, but it might have been older. We had to go to the library at least once every 2 weeks. And I was coming back from the library and I had some interesting books. And 2 of my friends was coming the opposite direction. And we met up and I was telling them about these books. So we go to the corner where the lights were, you see better. And I'm showing them these books. And this policeman, referred to as Two Gun Pete, drives up on us, shines a spotlight in our face, and tells us to move on. I'm like, what? Move on? Get that light out of my face. And he comes up and puts a gun to my head. And I'm scared to death. I was still stupid enough to ask him, "What's wrong? Why are you bothering us on this corner? What's wrong with us being on this corner? I'm just trying to show them these books." And he put his gun away and he said, "Look it, this is the lightest place on the street." I said, "Yeah, that's what we here." He said, but women see y'all on these corners and stuff, and they scared to come down the street. So y'all need to stay off of these corners. Now I know that wasn't true because the women weren't afraid of us because they knew us. But that was one of my first encounters with the police.
And how old were you again?
I must have been about 8 or 9.
Wow. It's not that I didn't hear you, but I guess I'm just so shocked. You were less than 10, for sure. And a gentleman a police officer put a gun to your head because you were standing on the corner talking about books, just because you were on the corner.
Right.
Okay. All right, please.
He was referred to as Two Gun Pete, so he had his reputation. He had to keep his reputation. Then I got stopped about 67 or 68 because before Fred Hampton got killed. I was actually invited to join the Black Panther Party when I was a student at the University of Illinois. So the Black Panthers come to Chicago and they were recruiting people and they asked if I would become a Panther. And I said, "I'll work with you, but I won't become a Panther. I don't want to go through all the ritual and the protocol stuff, but I'll work with you." So one of my friends who worked at the food bank club became a Panther. So we would go to the market and buy food at the wholesale market and bring it back to the basement of the project and sort it out and sell it for low prices to the tenants. But I became the buyer. I became the principal buyer. So every Friday I would go. So I'm driving the car and I stopped at the stop sign and I knew to stop because I knew everything's called rolling stop. They're going to get you. And this policeman came up and told me that I run through the stop sign. So I said, okay. Had my hands up on the top of the steering wheel so he could see me. And he started cursing me out. He put his gun on. And I said, "Dang." I looked at his badge. I was trying to get his badge number. He said, "You trying to get my badge number, ain't you?" He said, "You want me to give you a blank pencil?" And I thought about that. I said, "No, I'm okay." And my memory is good. I actually managed to memorize his badge number. He finally let me go after cursing me out and called me a few things. And I said, phew, man, I was lucky to get away from there. But I called the police when I got home, told them the badge number. They sent 2 plainclothes policemen to talk to me, detectives actually. They asked me to go to court for this ticket. So I went to court. And in court, they got after this policeman for doing this kind of stuff. They dismissed my case. And I guess this guy got punished in some way. That was the second big problem I had with the police before.
Twice. Gun put to your head by the police and over nothing.
Over nothing.
Yeah.
And then the third time, my friend Linda and I was coming back from Mexico City in a 1955 Ford. We went to Mexico City, came up through Nogales in Arizona and drove across. We went through Oklahoma City. And my friend Leonard was driving. I was asleep. And Leonard woke me up and said, man, something big is happening in Oklahoma City. I just passed 4 squad cars on the corner. I said, oh, boy. I went back to sleep. He woke up later and says, Shedrick, we did something big that's happening in Oklahoma City. Those 4 squad cars are following us right now. And they pulled us over, started talking all kind of crazy stuff to us. And we was talking crazy to them, too. I had on a Malcolm X Black Hand Society sweatshirt on at the time, leather jacket with the fringes all hanging off of it. And they locked us up. They put us in jail for the whole weekend.
What did they charge you with?
Nothing. A black police officer came in on, it was a Friday, the guys came in on Sunday, took us down to the interrogation room and told us, you in big trouble. You in big trouble? So, big trouble, what we do? We ain't did nothing. He say, you black, riding through a white neighborhood at 2:00 in the morning. That's what you did. I said, could you please get us out of here? And he got us out of there. When we got back to the car, they had searched the car. I mean, stuff that was in the trunk was in the back seat and all kinds. I mean, they searched the car, figuring we had some drugs or something, but we didn't have anything. That was the third time.
Do you have any idea of, like, if you had to put a rounded number about how many times you've been stopped in your life?
I say about at least 6. That's 6 that were bogus. I got stopped a couple of times. I was speeding, so they supposed to stop me a couple of times. But
Okay.
One time I got stopped in Texas with my daughter in the car, and she remembers this because it traumatized her. We were driving to Louisiana, going through Texas, and my wife was with Commissioned Corps, which is almost active duty military, like Navy. So we had cars and stuff. We could stay at an Army base or a Navy base and spend the night. So we spent the night at this Army base, and we was getting back on the highway. I came onto the highway. A police car was behind me. I said, look at this here. And as soon as I said that, they turned their lights on and pulled me over. Made me get out the car, hands on top of the car, spread my legs, searched me, put a gun on me, talked to me like I was dirt. And this was a female policeman that was doing all the talking. They looked at my driver's license, they checked and found out if the car was stolen or not, all this. And then he kind of like threw my stuff back at me. And I went to get back in the car. The male officer kind of hesitated. He turned around and said, I apologize for that. I'm sorry that happened.
Wow.
And off they went. And my daughter was just traumatized about that. She remembers that to this day. So.
Thank you for sharing that one as well. This next question, it's about America being a woman. And that could be a woman who is a friend, a stranger, a lover, whatever. If America was a woman, what would you say to her?
I've been in what's called the conflict resolution field for a long time now. And I tell America what I tell everybody. Listen. Really listen. Don't get defensive. Don't try to defend yourself. Just really listen and try to understand what people are saying to you. And if you want to tell somebody what you need, tell them without being offensive. And try to solve problems instead of fighting wars. I've done quite a few mediations with people who were really mad at each other initially. But once they really were able to hear each other, it was like, what were we even fighting for? We're being told from different points of view about stuff, and we're not stopping to look at each other's point of view, to try to understand that point of view. So it's a lot of stuff that people don't know about each other, but they're shouting at each other instead of sitting down and listening. Because I really believe that one of the biggest problems with race is peer pressure. Now, my mother sat me down and told me this too. She says, there are good white people in Mississippi, but they're afraid of the same terrorists that black people are. So the worst thing you could be called is a nigger lover. If you say, don't do that, that's not right, and you're defending a black person, they're going to, well, I get you and your children too. So I feel it makes it really difficult to trust a white person because of that peer pressure, and they could be the nicest people in the world, but if they're threatened, what are they going to do?
What is love to you?
Time. The time you spend, right now, the time we spend it together is love.
Mm.
This time is not coming back to me. It's not coming back to you. So we spend this time together. And what you spend the most time with is what you love the most. So if you spend your time washing your car all the time, instead of playing with your children, you love your car more than you love your children.
That's clear.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything about you that we haven't covered that challenges the stereotype, any stereotype about black men?
Oh, wow. Well, I like to do Latin dance. I play tennis a lot. Love all kinds of instruments. I got a whole collection of instruments. And I love children. I love children. And I look at all children are mine. So the best thing I've ever done in life is to be a father and a grandfather. Taking good care of my wife, taking good care of my children's mama, because she's fantastic.
That's great. That's great. What, if anything, did you get out of this conversation?
Well, a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It just makes me feel good to be able to share my experience with people. And that teacher in me, I'm hoping people will be able to learn something from this.
I just want to thank you because, as you said, time is love. And what I get from the time you took and then all that you shared is how much you actually love the world. Not just Black people, not just Americans, but really love humanity. And I am moved by how clear you are that we're all the same. It's just so clear that you get that, see that, and how you talk about things, it's obvious that there is a spirit of forgiveness that you just naturally carry. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening. As you can hear, you do not want to miss any of these brothers. Make sure you subscribe. You can find more at our website, 365brothers.com, 365brothers.com. This is Robin Shine. To listen is to love.